Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast, where we're all about helping you cut the tie to all that holds you back. The excuses, the fears, the people, that sense of entitlement. Cut the ties so you can unleash your inner entrepreneur. Your host, Thomas Helfrich, is on a mission to make more entrepreneurs in the world and make them better at entrepreneurship.
Hey, welcome to Never Been Promoted. We are going to have a fun conversation today. A little different direction than we normally do with entrepreneurship, but I think it's an important one because, you know, the guy we're going to interview here, Anthony Kuo, like status quo, he told me, but he's more than that because he's a career coach, but a specific one around satisfaction and your career satisfaction. So a number of his companies, Untamed Career, we're having a conversation about how to get the most out of your career. Excuse me. And actually wake up happy to go to work, which is a concept a lot of people do not even realize is possible, and even less people actually realize to have. So I'm excited to have this because, I got to tell you, in my career, I would say at times I was happy, but it was probably more around people, less around the work. So we'll have a good conversation here in just a few moments. If this is your first time being here, thank you so much for joining. I hope you like the content. If you do, go to youtube.com and, give the channel a subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast here down the road after, we do these live after the fact, it's really important to do some reviews on Apple and Spotify. And if you got a minute, just take a nice time or take a minute to take a 5-star review for us. If you don't like that, our content, we'll do something different. Or even if you want to come on the show, connect to me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Thomas Helfrich. But our mission is simple. Our mission is to help entrepreneurs get better at entrepreneurship. Now, there's a lot of ways you need to do that with the idea and notion of cutting the tie to the things that hold you back, the sense of entitlement you might have, excuses, fears, things like that. You got to let that stuff go. Otherwise, you're just restricting your ability to be successful. And so that being said, I hope you enjoy the show. Let's bring on our guest, Mr. Anthony. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to hear what kind of get into the weeds a little bit of how you become a career satisfaction coach in your own story. First of all, where are you joining from today?
I'm in New York City. It is very warm today. We've got feels like 100 degrees, but I'm sure you're no stranger to that. Yeah,
here in Atlanta, 100 degrees, is 100 degrees. Like it's hot. It doesn't actually get that hot here that often. It's the humidity and kind of pressure. I will tell you, I grew up in the Midwest in St. Louis, and it is hotter there in the summer for sure. Just as, if not more humid. So yeah. Atlanta's got a bad rep for something that it's really pretty comfortable here. All right. Icebreaker question. If you were a superhero villain, which one are you going to be?
Ooh.
Actually, can you be a superhero, super villain? If you're a villain in a superhero movie, what would you be?
I don't know why this came to mind, but Venom.
Oh, that's a good one. Is he really is he a bad guy?
I don't know. He's ambiguous. You like him, but he's not exactly for good either.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of like there's a few of those out there that are like you don't really like you're rooting for him, but he's not exactly the best.
Yeah.
He's not Superman. I'm sure he hates to hear.
It's like I like it. I like the character because it gives you a little access to like your darker impulses.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll go with that.
It looks painful though when he transforms.
Oh, absolutely.
That does not look comfortable. And
I wish it was just the suit, but
it is not. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Why do superheroes have capes? I don't like. It doesn't make sense. I was watching Dune, and the dude has a cape. I'm like,
right.
Why do you need a cape?
So it looks cool in the wind, obviously.
Yeah, but it's just, I think Incredibles did it best. Or the capes get sucked into engines and
yeah.
All right, here nor there. Your career, your Untamed Career is your company, and you're the you're a career satisfaction coach. So just give us a few lines on what that means in your company, what you're doing for the world, but then back up kind of how you got there and how you got to become that kind of coach.
Yeah, so I am a career satisfaction coach. I put a lot of emphasis on the word satisfaction, which is what it sounds like. Because you can change your job, you can leave your job, you can start your own business, but are you satisfied? Is that something you actually enjoy? This is the question that I work with. So it's less about resumes and interviews and more about how do you manage your career, whatever it looks like, to be happy and to actually want to engage with it. Because honestly, we spend so much of our time doing our work. Especially as Americans, we have this rep that is kind of well earned for working hard all the time. And so for spending what I consider, and I invite you to consider, as the best hours of your day and the best years of your life, I say you ought to get something out of it back beyond a paycheck. And this is a very personal story for me. I grew up, to go back, we have to go real far back.
I mean, you're not that old. It can't be. It's not. We're talking like dinosaurs here.
No, not that far.
There was no internet when I was born. I'm pretty sure the internet was around when you were born. I'm gonna guess.
It was. But to go back to understand the story and of how I and why I started into this direction, we have to go back to when I was a kid and learning piano, because my parents were Juilliard trained musicians. And they taught me, my mom especially, who is a pianist, that she taught me how to play the piano from a very young age. And it was something that I had a lot of talent for. I was very good at it. And to the point where when I was 15, and then again when I was 17 years old, I performed at Carnegie Hall. And awesome. Thank you. And it's funny because everyone says that. Everyone's like, oh, wow, that's an achievement. And it's not an achievement. But what it felt like to me was just work. It was just something that I could do, had to do. And it wasn't actually something that I really, really enjoyed for the art itself. It wasn't something that I really, I always got a little bit confused when I saw my parents just love music. They got so into it. They nerded out on this composer and that piece. And meanwhile, me, I was like, all right, can I just get through this now? And that taught me from a very, very young age that there's a huge difference between being good at something versus enjoying it, actually being satisfied and fulfilled by it. And this persisted through my early career, where, again, I fell into something that I was very good at. And it was intellectually interesting. I was in the marketing and analytics world. It was intellectually satisfying for a time. There was a lot to learn. And then there just came a certain point where I was like, I am doing better and better professionally, but I'm feeling worse and worse personally. I was spiraling deep into a depression. And it was in that dark place that the seeds of this were really sown, because that's where I started to ask myself, truly, what is career satisfaction in the first place?
Well, and you dive into that a little bit because, I've never been promoted, right? But it doesn't mean I didn't have a good career. I mean, I've had, I was a chief innovation officer in nearly $1 billion services company. Never been promoted, just found new jobs or was asked to leave. I guess I could have called the book that. Absolutely. I make that joke too often, but you're new, so you get to hear it. So the idea though is you get this dream job, you're making over $500,000 a year, and you're killing it, right? Like by all measurable standards, early 40s, you're like, this is it, this is awesome. And I got to tell you, I felt myself going is this it? It's kind of boring. It was paid well, don't get me wrong, but it's I don't know. I know what you mean. You feel like you're just wasting time. So personally, I would just play video games or go golfing. I would do everything possible just to get paid as much as possible to have fun during the day. I'm a terrible employee, like I always have been. Got my stuff done, but is this where you're to me, I didn't know what the calling was. For me, it was entrepreneurship. I needed to be my own boss. I feel like I'm doing creative. I understand that piano piece, right? You get forced into it. I didn't play as well, obviously, as you for sure, but now I'd love to go learn piano if I had the time. Back then, hell no. God, this was the worst hour of every week that I had to go do. And so now, you respect what your parents try to do for you, but man, when you're a kid, it's horrible. But then you said you didn't find the satisfaction. So let's talk about that. What did it's a kind of a calling, but when or how did you identify what was missing?
Yeah. So I knew from the beginning. I relate to a lot of what you're saying about being a terrible employee. Like I was a good employee in that I got my job done. I did well. I was, I was highly communicative. They liked me, and I was good at my job. But I was a horrible employee in that I never wanted to be there.
I guess
From
that's
day
how I
one.
describe it too. I was one of those people who said, like, let's just push for a promotion as fast as possible to make more money, because that's the only reason I was there. I didn't. Yeah.
I didn't actually want to be there, and I knew that from day one. And I knew that I wanted to be my own boss. And like, I most likely, like you, just have a general suspicion and dislike of being told what to do, which is why stylistically I had to go the entrepreneur route sooner rather than later. Right. The thing that was missing for me at the time was I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I knew I wanted to work for myself, and I had a bunch of like side gigs going on where I did a little bit of drop shipping, a little bit of Amazon, or a little bit of like just Google AdWords. Like I set up blogs and got some passive traffic going through there. And it had the same problem though as what I was doing for my job, which is that it was working-ish, but it wasn't actually that interesting to me. It didn't tug at anything beyond like, oh, I can make a quick buck here.
Right.
And so push come to shove, would I take the risk to leave this safe, prestigious, pays well, respects me, etc. job for something that is probably not going to, like, I'm not interested to actually make it work? No.
Right.
And something that I came to realize was that my favorite part of the job was mentoring people, was helping people advance their careers and navigate things, which was something that, despite my general disinterest in the like hierarchies of the corporate world, I was sort of really good at. And people would come to me for their advice, for my advice. And one thing led to another, and I started having people send their friends to me or their family members. And I was like, okay, I think I have something here. And I took the part that I enjoyed about my job, which is not only the mentoring of people, but also the advisory aspect of it. Right. Because I was mainly operating as a consultant. And I like telling people what to do and how to do it. And it kind of I found my way into a format where I started helping people with something that actually mattered to me.
Excuse me. Did you see the commercial aspects of it though early? Of, hey, I could charge for this?
Not super early, but pretty early. Yeah. Right. Because I helped my friends and colleagues for free just because I wanted to help. Yeah.
Did you feel like you needed to develop like a curriculum as part of that, or was it more of
the curriculum came organically, and it came through me realizing, in order to do this thing that I'm asking somebody to do, here's this upstream piece they're missing, and in order to do this upstream piece, right? So, for example, most people come to me thinking, I need a new resume. I say, okay, what do you need the resume for? Right. Well, they don't really know. They just want a new resume. So then, okay, where are you actually going for, right? Because to write a resume, or it doesn't matter if it's a resume or, like for entrepreneurs, when I quit my job, I thought I was done with writing resumes. Turned out to be entirely false, because all it did was shift format, and now my website and my emails and my social media presence, that's my resume, right? Right. So who exactly are you trying to appeal to? And what's the problem that you actually want to solve?
Right. And why do you think you need a new job? Like, what's missing?
Yeah, exactly.
I admire the people who can stay in their jobs and they're actually happy. Like, I mean, I think intent's probably, I don't know who's actually happy doing their jobs. It's like the people I've seen that are happiest doing jobs are usually people who are miserable at home, and it's just better than that. Like, do you mean like you see like they have a miserable life at home or something else, and they work as their escape? and they're like, oh, I'm satisfied because this is so much better than driving home or whatever else. So take me through this a bit, because I don't know if I could ever get career satisfaction. I don't know so take me through someone like me who would be like, listen, I wouldn't be here if I had that ability. I don't think. I'm sure of it.
Well, let me ask you a question. You seem to enjoy what you're doing right now. Do you enjoy your work right now?
I mean, yeah, I love it. Like so it doesn't feel like work. It's not even work to me anymore. Like
there you go. So I would say that you actually do have career satisfaction.
Yeah. Well, once it was for me, but like, and building my own teams, but it was when it was somebody else, I was always like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I help people with is redefining what a career is, right? Because we have impressed upon us from a very early age, just societally, from our parents and media, what a career even means. And most of us, when we think about the word career, the picture of a cubicle and a 9-to-5 job comes to mind, right?
100%. I mean, like the notion of a career, part of our mission is to change the nature of what that means. Just because a definition of success. So like for entrepreneurship, for me, if you can replace what your income would have been in a W-2, you're absolutely killing it. If you could do that on your own, I mean, 100% killing it. The other media is the massive exits. People say that, I sold my company for 10 million and now they're like, play golf all day. That's awesome. Those people are new. They're a different level and they've figured some stuff out that you still can too. But if you can replace your career or money, your success. And I don't think you should expect it overnight. If it takes you, 20 years to get to $250,000 a year salary, you're probably not going to leave and go right to $250,000 salary. You're going to have to, you can go fast, but so when you're working with people, is that part of the steps to redefine success, what a career means to them?
It is.
What do you do to help manage though, like the families and the judgy people of the world?
So the very first thing, the very first thing that I help people do is take them through a process that I call the care card. It is the first of 3 steps in my process. Step 1 is you got to know yourself. You got to know what your definition of success is. And then based on that, then step 2 is, okay, where can you find that in the world? Can you find it in your job? Do you have to leave your job? Do you have to leave the corporate world entirely? And then step 3 is the practical steps of making it a reality. So that's where, if it makes sense, we might work on a resume, but we might also work on, a transition plan to something else. And so the very first thing we need to understand is, how do you define success? How do you define satisfaction? Because that is going to be and should be very different for you than it is going to be to me than to the next person. And the way I help people do this is by using this working metaphor of a care card, where, if you go to a store and buy a plant, that plant is going to come with a little card on it that says, this is how much water it needs, this is how much light it needs. Essentially, how do you take care of this organism so it can thrive, right? So what if we could develop something like that for you as a human? And a lot of people, when I say that, say, oh, well, okay, I need an hour of meditation, I need 7 weeks of PTO, I need to work remotely, blah, 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 which might all be true. But what we're talking about is a lot deeper than that, right? What we're talking about is what actually has you experience thriving. What are the conditions that need to be present in order for that to be available to you? So through a combination of like storytelling and lateral thinking, as well as more logical, like personality assessments, we can figure that out for you. Where, just for example, I once worked with 2 chefs, 2 professional chefs, who were very different personalities wise. And you would think that, they both do what they do, but one of them really enjoyed process, like the process of like mise en place, getting everything organized, and also kind of command and control of the kitchen. The other one was a lot more into the like creating joy through food, creating those moments of connection and spark. And that was very representative in their personalities. And one of the things that we ended up helping them do was just like identify that about themselves. Because so many of us identify with the title of our job. I am a
Right.
chef, which just flattens everything out. But we got to these elements in the personality, and that gave us options, right? Because the person who liked the process and telling people what to do, as well as an appreciation for nourishing food, we got her to become a holistic health coach. And the chef who was more about creating the joy in the community, she ended up opening her own cookie shop in her town, and now does like cookie decoration by commission, and also does these classes. And there's an actual storefront where you can go in, and like she gets to see you enjoying her creations, and that was really important to her.
So I go through that process. So, because I think that's something that you should be revisiting probably, I don't know, every few years or several years as your season of life changes. Like when you get out in your 20s, what's going to be important to you and satisfying is going to be different than your 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever else. But take me through that. Like, what's the trigger? Is it usually someone's like, hey, I'm just kind of not happy, or it's just the resume piece? But take me through that. And then where's the rough part? Where's the person go, I can't do that? Where do they make the excuse?
So nobody comes to me because they're happy.
Right. You get unhappy people. It's a glutton for punishment right there.
Yeah. No, I get unhappy people, and there's so many different flavors of unhappy that I encounter. Most of it is one of three flavors, sometimes a combination. It's either I'm so burnt out, I just can't even imagine going back to work the next day. I'm at the verge of rage quitting. More common is something's wrong. I know something's wrong, but I can't put my finger on what. I definitely fell in that bucket in my personal career. A third category is I know something's wrong, and I know I need a change, but I have absolutely no idea what I would do other than what I'm currently doing. Like, you just can't make a picture of the future. And each of these scenarios can create a feeling of stuckness and despair, for lack of a better description. To your point about where excuses can come in, or resistance, that can come in a couple of points, right? So I mentioned that process where step one is know yourself, step two is set your destination, step three is make it a reality. Mm-hmm. Resistance can come at every point, and it does come at every point. It's an emotionally very roller coastery journey, and I'm very upfront about that with people, so they don't come in and expect like, oh, I'm just gonna coast through this, right? Because when ultimately what it boils down to, almost all forms of resistance in this process comes down to a hesitancy to self-advocate in whichever form of this, right? So in the beginning, there's a high where, oh, I know myself, I know my needs, I know everything. And then there's an almost immediate crash of, oh, shoot, I'm actually not getting this met, right? And that's where you need to make a decision.
Yeah.
Right. Do you want
in that moment too, right? It's also the realization of all the time invested and this is a big one for a lot of people. It's the public perception of you. Mm-hmm. So your parents, your spouse, your friends, of all of a sudden him, and people might say, oh, I admire you for doing that. Parents probably tell you, like, what are you doing? Like, but this is a part where I always talk about with, kind of the cutting the tie idea, is that you can't care. You can only care about what your vision is at that point, and it's your life. It's not theirs. If you have kids, it's your life. You get one of those, so you might as well maximize it. And you can't worry about some of these pressures. Now, you do have to check crazy. Like, crazy needs checked, but like if it's something that's you're good at, something that you find value in, and something that people will pay value for, what is wrong with that? Like, and I think that's the basis for it. But you do have to check. I don't think having money is usually the biggest thing. It's usually how people think. So as you're doing that, do you have like like an affirmation? Like, what do you do to get people? Because and maybe you disagree with that statement, but I think the idea is like, what do you do to get people over that? Because it's like an anchor, right? It keeps pulling them back.
Yeah.
No. Like, hey, you're like, what do you do? Like, how do you coach through that?
So one of the big things is that career change can be and often is huge in people's minds. And so what I do is I help actually take that giant challenge and sequence it out into a bunch of smaller questions, right? So, yes, you do have to check crazy, and that is one of the steps. Yes, you do have to make sure that it makes sense for your life, or how to navigate things with if you have to have a conversation with your spouse, or considering your kids. Those are, in my process, downstream questions that if we pay too much attention to in the beginning, will kind of clog up your brain and rob you of your creativity, or rob you of your playful energy, because we do need playful energy in this life, right? And I 100% agree with the idea that, like, yes, it's your life. I am fond of saying it's your career. It's not your mom, it's not your wife, it's not your kid who has to live through 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week doing what you're doing. And you're the one who has to live through the consequences of your career choices. So, with that in mind, though, yes, we also care about the people in our lives. We care about our communities. We care about our families. So there does obviously need to be a balance, but here's your permission slip to be a little bit selfish. And what I do to help people through this is focusing first on, like, okay, let's get clear and give you a vocabulary for what you need. Because if we can center on what you need, then we can be a lot more efficient about getting it, right? Because most people think I need to blow everything up, when in fact you might need to blow one thing up. Right.
Well, you do, and you have to blow something up, but but it didn't have to be blown up. Sometimes it could just be discarded. Yep. Like, and the idea that it doesn't have to be this massive change.
Exactly.
And I also this is one of the reasons when I know when I went on my own, and it wasn't like when you go on your own, you're not still looking for a job. Like, you are, but at some point they won't hire you, or you really don't want it and you don't try. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure which is which there, but you take this turn. And my idea was, even if I did this for 5 years, I'm going to learn so much. Like, I feel like I'll have a different career if I want to go work for somebody. And don't get me wrong, if someone goes, here's a great role, some startup, I want you to go do this, I would consider it because I'd be part of something that's growing, something that'd be equity. But I would do that. I would consider it, at least. Consider it. Start there. But that would be because I've took this risk, and now I've learned some new skills that I would not have been able to do 3 years, 5 years, whatever ago. And I think the mentality of, like, hey, whatever journey you do, you're going to learn so much. If in your mind that's a fallback and that's enough to go do it, that's enough. Like, go. What do you recommend, though, for the switch? Like, is it just more long drawn out, or how do you? I know it depends, but
it depends.
What do you like to see? What's your ideal system say it should do?
It is entirely dependent on the person, actually. So I have my personal preference, which is I prefer a more gradual approach. That's based on my personality and my circumstances. What I help people do, though, is evaluate the style of transition that will make sense for them. Again, based on how you tick and what you need, right? Because I have worked with people where they were on the verge of rage quitting, but actually they just needed to have a conversation with their boss, and that changed everything for them. I've also worked with people who, in a span of, say, 2 months, completely changed their career trajectory. They moved, they entered a different industry, and it was what on the outside looked like blowing up, and for them it was just like the relief valve that gave them. And so I actually have a framework where, if you think about how impatient you are, like how much time are you willing to allow something to take versus how much disruption are you willing to have in your life. And you can be high on both, you can be low on both, you can high on one and low on one. And based on where you land in that map, you can actually pick the approach that's going to make sense for you. Because if you have a high tolerance for disruption and a low patience, great, blow everything up, right? If you have a low tolerance for disrupting things, right? You've got, 3 kids in school and you don't want to like mess up their social lives by moving. And also you kind of have a tolerance for letting things take their time because you don't hate your job, you don't love it, but right, then you might be more open to a path where it takes a little bit more of a gradual slope.
That's a great point. The matrix. I was thinking through that, like, you're knowing what your risk tolerance is and monitoring that, because one where you start, as you find successes, your risk tolerance goes up significantly. But that's also part of the planning of like, hey, to really make it to be like, there's comfort associated with this. Yeah. But if you're always on the opposite ends, like it's going to be rough. Like it's going to be hard. And if you don't like change, but if they're talking to you, right? If someone listen to somebody out there who's not talking to you, like if you're unhappy in your career, you really, the hardest questions. And I think, and maybe this is a good time can people come talk to you for 30 minutes to say,
yes,
just, okay. So maybe actually, shameless plug time for Anthony here. Who should get a hold of you and how should they do that? Just so, because I have a question that'll follow onto that. So
yeah,
who and how for you?
So the who, if you're having that experience of I'm in my job and it's just not working and I'm not entirely sure why, but I like drag my feet to wake up and go to work. If you have the Sunday Scaries, for example, then you should come talk to me, right? It's really not about the age or the career stage. I work with people who are all the way from, fresh out of school, all the way up to considering retirement and executives. But if you have that, I just can't get myself to go to work, it's like pulling teeth to get to work, we should probably have a conversation. And how to do that is go to untamedcareer.com. There is a spot where you can fill out some information and sign up for a 30-minute consult, free of charge, just for the time and information. And, of course, if it's an aligned opportunity, then we might chat about that. But there you go. You got the website up.
There you go. That's where you need to go, because I think that contact and finish where it is, though. I think, the idea being, if you've, I mean, everyone in the world is probably going to call you if they really think about it, right? But to discover, the question was also to, what really makes you unhappy? Is it, the Sunday Scaries or the Sunday butter? I remember my wife, when she was in another industry, because she was moved from like investment operations for like, investment firms to HR. And every Sunday she's like, oh my God, she'd just get anxious. And she was like, I was like, oh my God. And you don't realize it's what it is. Even in entrepreneurship, there was a meeting of a difficult customer I would have every week. And I would just dread that coming. I was like, oh, I guess I hate talking to this person, because they were just so rude. That identification is usually enough to ask why, because you might like your role, but you really hate how your boss interacts. That doesn't probably need a career change. You might just need to go talk to HR a couple of times. It's like, I feel this guy is just terrible and I don't know what to do about it. Like, I mean, but you better be prepared that they'll manage you out after that. Remember, your boss is there for a reason. If you can't figure out why your boss is there, you'll never have your boss's level of job. Like that. Mm-hmm. That's career advice. All right. So, take us through that. So you want them to come, if you're having some struggles, get a hold of you to like, just have a consult from the website there. But, you personally, what kind of makes you kind of get that? Do you have those right now is it maybe marketing, or is it, sales? Is it like, what creates the Sunday Scaries, so to speak, for you in your current career?
So this is a fantastic question, because I have a very powerful lever that I can pull to deal with that as a business owner, which is I hire.
That's true.
Yeah, so I love the being with people part of it, right? Like I love doing what we're doing right now, podcasting, having conversations, whether it is in person, whether it is in a session, whether it is part of the group that I run. I love being with people and having conversations. What I don't love and what drives me up the wall is when I need to like write it down and post it on and format it and like create my content plan.
Social media.
Yeah, the social media hashtags. Oh my God. Like I know people love it. And that is so not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, right? People do love it. So we don't need to do everything. Right. And I'm fortunate that my business is in a place where I could have people come on and help. And I progressed beyond the point where I had to like drag my feet to do it just to make it work. But I'm very lucky to have somebody who is incredible at the social media game, and she loves it. And so what a relief for both of us, because she gets to do something that she really loves to do. I get to be free of it.
Right. And that's a great point. So I tell you, even if you work for somebody, I outsourced lots of parts of my job. So the reason I started my own company was, the marketing department was unable to kind of produce leads for the thing I needed to do to build a practice. So I just kind of solved it my own and paid my own people. And this is the same team I work with for Instantly Relevant. And, at first that was great, but then when you start working on your own company more than anyway, the point being is you can do this even sometimes if you're allowed, depends on your industry, even when you work for somebody. Mm-hmm. So to be creative, there was a long time ago, a guy who got let go, but he had basically hired someone out of China to do his job. And he basically just, he made a couple $100 a year. I think he paid this guy like 30 or 40 a year, which was a great salary for the guy to do this. And he just did nothing. He just kind of was a project manager and they fired him. I'm thinking, man, you hire a guy like that. Like that's a guy you promote and say, can you just do this? Because we're getting 5, you can get 5. Anyway, the point is you should do this. You should definitely identify in your own world the little things. And here's the thing, I think you should solve where you can solve your own problems for unhappiness. And it could be things around, I feel like I'm overweight and I need and I don't like to sit here, or like you should be doing things that you can control to really identify where the unhappiness comes from. Because sometimes it's related to other things and it vents out and work. Other times you're like, I absolutely hate doing this. I got into accounting because my parents said I should. Those are the people who should come talk to you for sure. Like, let's rethink it. Yeah. You're an adult. You're a grown ass adult. Get time to take control of yourself, cut the cord again and go. For you personally though, since you've made the move, what is entrepreneurship and this idea of, running a business? What is it really, what's it meant to you? Can you even speak to what that would mean to you?
This is a long time journey. Like I've wanted to have my own business since I was like a kid. And so this is really a fulfillment of like a childhood dream to be able to do something for myself and also to be able to help people at the same time. What it means a lot more practically is that it's about freedom and control for me. I went to the doctor recently because I was just feeling under the weather and I just needed some meds, and they were like, "Do you need a sick note?" I was like, "Yeah, my boss is a jerk."
Yeah, so egotistical. Let me tell you, good looking. Right? I mean, really a charmer.
Yeah, yeah. I also like to say like, "Oh man, my boss really can't handle it when I put in for my vacation days." Like, I love never having to deal with that.
That is good. Like, perfect example. I will autobiography. Like, for 20 years after me and my wife, I was an athlete, college athlete. I let it go. And so I like whatever. Earlier this year, I said, you know what? Is it really going to hurt if I block 8 to 10 every morning? Or I've touched an email after I've dropped kids off to school, whatever else. And like, how much productivity? Because you're always afraid of taking your foot off the gas. Like, that's an entrepreneurial syndrome that you're like, and you're right. I didn't need permission. I just needed to block time and make other shit work. So reduce times from 30 minutes to 20 or 30 to 15 for introductory calls. Be more batched on when we do podcasts, whatever it is. And I found it, and I got to tell you, it worked. I mean, and even if you're working for somebody, give up Netflix for an hour, or go hop on a rowing machine or something. Like, right. My point is, or if you want to go learn a new skill, pick up a book, whatever it is. You can't, you gotta get rid of the stuff that's, you feel like you deserve sometimes, that drink.
There's something that's really wonderful about like adding something to your life that you really enjoy that kind of eats into the available time you have to work, because it's such a constraint. Like I recently got really into triathlon and endurance racing, and that takes time to train. And so for a while I felt that tension. I actually relished in it. I allowed it to exist. Like I have to train, but I also have to do this for my work to keep things moving. And like you say, you just figure it out. And part of the figuring out was getting some help to deal with things that were falling off of my plate. And in terms of prioritization, what was falling off my plate, naturally what was happening was I was just avoiding things I didn't want to do anyway. Right. But like, how awesome is it that I can decide, hey, I want to do this thing. And if I want to go for like a long training ride in the middle of the day, I wouldn't do it today because it's freaking awful outside.
2,000 degrees. It's nice in the park though. It always is.
But like I can do that.
You can. And I think this is the piece that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you have a lot more control sometimes over your own time, even when you work for somebody else. Yeah. I think any job that requires you to have 70 hours a week is not that is just abuse. Like your 2/3 of your adult life is going to be working. Like because you're gonna be thinking about that work all weekend. There's no way you would work a job that's 50, 60, 70 hours a week and shut it off on the weekend.
If you're working more than 40, 50 hours a week, that is a reflection of poor time management and poor project management and poor resource allocation.
Agreed. I think that's one to rethink it all for that too. Tell you what, one more time. So how do you want people to get a hold of you, Anthony? I absolutely love this conversation because it's so important to so many people. Take your entrepreneurship route. If you can find happiness in a corporate job, awesome. But you want them to go to untamedcareer.com and just do the, or connecting on LinkedIn, of course, as well. But just do the consultation, click through.
Yeah. So if you want to just kind of follow me, Untamed Career is my social media handle across all the platforms. If you want to actually have a conversation with me for 30 minutes, go to untamedcareer.com. There's a specific page, the process page, where there's a link where you can make that happen.
That's awesome. As you kind of build your own company, that's my last question, maybe last. I don't know why. How are you addressing your own employees coming in to make sure that they're a fit and they're going to be happy where they are?
I'm so glad you asked this question because not enough companies do this, or even they either don't care to or they don't know to care to. But I think it is like as a career satisfaction coach, I think it is just part of the integrity of me and my company that my employees are also happy and are satisfied with what they're doing.
Right.
And also not just them, but also me. Like I cannot be the career satisfaction coach who is miserable at his own job. Right.
Well, unless you're like a psychiatrist, like who's also probably crazy. Like sometimes like you get these, people.
Just because it's like this is a integrity piece for me. And part of how we do that is just like communication. And also using the tools we have at our disposal. I put everyone through the process. I put everyone through, especially the first part of the process of understanding what is on your care card. What are your interests? What are your higher level interests that make you feel fulfilled when you are pursuing them? What is your style when you're having a good day? How can we support that? How can we assign you to the type of work that takes advantage of that style as opposed to forcing you to twist yourself into a pretzel in order to get the job done. This is also seeps into the hiring process, right? Because if we think about this is the type of work we need done, these are the problems we need solved. what type of personality would be successful at that? What type of person would enjoy that, right? So then we can start to include that in our hiring profile, where the ideal candidate would have this type of interest, would present themselves with this type of style. And at this point, I've been doing it long enough that I can talk to somebody for 15 minutes and have a pretty good idea of what their needs are. And so I can make an assessment of, are we in a position to meet those needs?
Yeah, and I think it may take away just finally is if you have your own company and you left the company because you're unhappy, be conscious not to repeat that.
Yes.
And
yes.
I try, I know we did from day one 4-day work weeks. I don't track hours. You have to get your stuff done, but you can do a side hustle that's non-competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I actually encourage it because I think it helps with creativity and work from anywhere. I do not care because get your work done. And I think these are the ideas that, to me, those come with problems as well. But like the idea is you still got to hold people accountable and, and that's it. So, Anthony, thanks so much for sharing this with us. I think it's cool what you're doing. I love from a marketing standpoint, I love how focused you are on a very niche. My guess is there's probably some industries that do better than others with you. But where you're even starting, in a very long journey ahead. You've committed to all your social handles, which is interesting because later on you're like, oh, I don't have any personal speaking from experience. It becomes a problem later. You'll face that problem later when you want your own social media handles. You're like, I don't actually have any for my person. But thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to put you in the green room. There's no cookies, snacks, or anything else in there. Just I'll be back.
Apple juice.
There you go. You have to go to your own for that. I'll be right back. For everyone who is watching today and listening, thank you so much. Anthony is I've met with him offline here a little bit. He's brilliant at what he does here, and he's really good at he said assessing quickly based on the inputs you're giving or even the things maybe you're holding back on to kind of draw it out of you. I don't know why it hurts. I would go talk to him just to see if you're really satisfied and hear what he has to say, because you might just gain that one perspective that makes you just maybe you don't need to do a whole career nuking and F it all. You just might need a different mindset. You might need a little coaching through it. So it's worth checking out. I would definitely do that. This was your first time here and you made it to here. Thank you so much. The Never Been Promoted channel is all about helping those entrepreneurs. You get better at entrepreneurship, get better at life, and you really just cut the tide of things that are holding you back. Identify it and figure out a way to let it go. If it's not, it's not something that actually adds value, let it go. Until we meet again, get out there, go unleash your entrepreneur. If you get a moment, obviously I always ask for you to, please, review the podcast positively at Apple, Spotify, or wherever, and, go to YouTube and give it a subscribe at Never Been Promoted. Thanks for listening. And until next time, go unleash that entrepreneur.
Thank you for listening to the Never Been Promoted podcast. If you liked today's show, subscribe at youtube.com/@neverbeenpromoted. Until next time, get out there and go unleash your inner entrepreneur.
Thanks again to InstantlyRelevant.com for producing the show, all the social media, all the content, posts, articles, everything. Could not do it without you. InstantlyRelevant.com. Check it out. They're awesome. Once again, InstantlyRelevant.com.